Welcome back to Earth Station Trek, a show where we trek from the early days on NBC to the future on Paramount Plus and everywhere in between. I'm Charles Kelso, and it's my privilege to introduce the Earth Station Trek crew: Keith Johnson,
Huzzah!
Alan Seiler,
Greetings, humans.
and Veronica Dashel.
Hi.
And we're joined tonight by our good friend, Bobby Nash. Welcome to the show,
Yay!
Bobby.
Bobby.
So good to be back on the station.
If I could correct it very slightly, it's award-winning Bobby Nash.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
That's
Sir Bobby
right.
Nash.
Yes. Other people can say that. When I say it, I become egotistical when I say it.
The lady in the grocery store gives you a weird look.
Yeah, no, right?
We were all at a
It's on my it's on my like credit card. Yeah.
exactly. We were all at a dinner together last weekend for like all the podcasters on our network, and you should have just walked around and said, "Hi, I'm award-winning author Bobby Nash. Nice to meet you."
I tell you what, yeah. When I won my first award, I was co-hosting Earth Station 1 with Mike and Mike. And that kind of became the thing. They started introducing me that way. And so it became this thing now. Like if I go to conventions or like at the dinner, I'll walk in and somebody's going to shout it out.
Yes.
Which I got to tell you is a great little ego boost when you walk in a room.
Absolutely.
Heck yeah.
Absolutely.
Well, in addition to being an award-winning author, you're a longtime Star Trek fan. You've done some writing for Star Trek fan projects. You've got quite a history with Star Trek. And I was just reading a little bit about it in a book that's out right now called Galloping Around the Cosmos.
Oh.
And you have a piece in that. So let's start from there. Like, how did you get into Star Trek?
Star Trek was it started as one of those things that I caught. It played. I'm a child of the 70s. I was born in 71. So it was in reruns by the time I was born. So when I was in elementary school, it played in the afternoon. So right after I got home from school and I was having my snack and whatever, it was on. And that was my first introduction to Star Trek. And I just fell in love with it. For the same reason probably most of us did. It was just really cool. Yeah. I love the adventure aspect of it. I love the exploratory aspect of it, the discovery and all that. And so I would watch an episode of Star Trek while I was having my after-school snack. And then when it was over, my mother would promptly shoo me outside where I would be, and I was an only child until I was 9. So I had to, keep myself entertained. And so I would mimic, what I had watched. So I started playing Star Trek or whatever else I was watching. And after a while I started coming up with my own stories, not just content to rehash the episode I just watched. And that was probably one of the earliest things of me storytelling. And so, but doing things like that and it was different shows too. I mean, my mother used to tell stories about, I was such a big fan of the Spider-Man cartoon that my mother would tell stories about, I just don't know about this kid. He runs around the backyard going psh, 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 all day. I don't know what he's doing.
Are you talking about the classic, the Spider-Man? That one. Oh yeah,
Yeah.
I love that one.
And so I would, because he would, psh, psh, and swing.
Yes.
So I'm out in the backyard doing all that, and my mother thought it was the funniest thing ever.
I'm sorry.
That cartoon had great sound effects, and I clearly remember the web shooters that you're talking about. They had great sound effects on that.
So I started mimicking those things and then not content to just do what I had watched, started making up my own stories and coming up with different scenarios. And I don't remember any of them, but I used to just it was fun. It was me and I got to go out and play with imaginary Kirk, Spock, McCoy, et cetera, which is great fun. Great playmates.
I think Star Trek, for a lot of us, it snags you for the same reason a lot of other things do. It's colorful. The characters are going on adventures. They're funny and likable. But I think it holds you because there's more to it. It engages you on different levels as you get older, and you watch the shows differently, I think, as you grow up.
Well, I think too, they become a bit of like role models. I mean, these characters are everything my parents told me we should be,
Yeah.
people, do good things, study, and I mean all these things. And so I was seeing it in action. These were
Right.
people that they didn't solve every problem with a gun or their fist. There was a lot of thought and research and things like that they did. And it just kind of like stuck with me to the point where there was for that moment of much time, I had this thought of I should study science. Then I realized how much. Yeah, then I realized how much math was involved with that, and
Yeah.
I went another way.
Yeah.
Before our next question, I just want to say that we have a Facebook user who says that 60s Spider-Man cartoon was part of my daily after-school routine. Yeah.
Amen.
Nice.
Same here.
Mine was Lost in Space.
Yeah.
All the way.
Yeah.
I was just obsessed with it.
Well,
Same
and
here.
90s Spider-Man.
yeah, that was a good one too.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
well, and too, I think Spider-Man was really my first introduction to science fiction.
Mhm.
But it did lead me to find things like Lost in Space or Space
Oh, really?
1999 or Battlestar Galactica.
Wow.
Yeah, so that kind of led me and then of course, later in the 70s, Star Wars and
Yeah.
so yeah, so it was a really great time to be a fan of outer space.
Did you ever see or get exposed to the Star Trek animated series back in those early growing up days?
I did. Those were the ones I actually got to see,
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
live, first
Right.
first run, first time. And it was like, and I was so like, it was so cool too because it was the same people.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Captain Kirk sounds like Captain Kirk, and so and I found those to just be just wonderfully entertaining, really good stories, and I had a blast with them. Yeah.
So, Bobby,
Yeah.
since you were growing up in the 70s, and I remember that time very clearly, that was also the time when two things happened. A lot of message Saturday morning shows started coming,
Mhm.
and also there was everything in the world about we're going to destroy ourselves with nuclear war. There was like, my God, what was it, Arc 2 and all those, Jason the Star Command and all those goofy shows. Did you watch all those as well?
I missed those. I didn't watch Jason Star Command. I didn't really see Arc 2. Really, the first apocalyptic type stuff I remember seeing. It could be different, because I do remember Buck Rogers kind of had that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The underlying basis was,
Mhm.
and then things like the miniseries. V.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Dude, I loved V so much.
No
Yeah,
kidding.
those were kind of my first of, ooh, aliens are evil, or can be evil. It was we weren't going out looking for friendly aliens now.
Yeah.
These were some bad and so I think those were kind of the first times where I really saw things that kind of posited that we might destroy ourselves.
Yeah.
And then of course Planet of the Apes.
Oh,
things like
yes.
that. So yeah, and so but even as much as I enjoyed those, there was still a part of me that hoped for the Star Trek future,
Right.
where we would, we could find that we could go to another planet and we could like those people and they could like us, and it would, and of course you can't even do that in our real world, it seems like these days, but
Yeah.
Right.
but I do hope that it would be cool if one day, and of course Star Trek 2, they didn't shy away from it, like they had talked about World War III.
Yeah.
I mean, because they were really for certain in the 60s that by the 90s we would have all obliterated each other.
Right.
Yeah, the eugenics war with Khan was originally in the 90s.
Yeah, because we had the eugenics wars were talked about in Star Trek. The World War III was talked about.
Yeah.
And other wars as well. But I mean, certainly, and I didn't know any of that as a kid because I grew up in the 70s, so I didn't have those things to kind of measure it against. But as I've gotten older, and I see the world as an adult sees the world, not as a kid sees the world. I realize there was a lot of messages in Star Trek that I did not realize as a kid, but as I got older, I realized what they were doing.
Right.
Well, in the 60s, that's like first generation after World War II. And that everything about World War II lingers on, for that next generation or so, because I can't even imagine having lived through. I mean, and I was born in 62, so I wasn't that far removed from that, but it was a very different world ideologically, even, back then. And all that stuff gets fed into the art and the television and the books and the comics that were made at that time.
Yeah, because the people making it were alive.
Yeah.
And they remembered, even if they weren't fighting in the war, they remembered what it was like to be home, fearful of what was going to happen.
Right.
Right.
And we still get that too. I mean, growing up in the 70s and 80s, it was the Cold War and the Russians are coming.
Absolutely.
And somebody's going to nuke us. Those were the fears. And a lot of our entertainment in the 80s bears that out.
When I was in elementary school, I remember this based on what you guys were saying. When I was in elementary school, an absolute part of your school curriculum was doing the drill.
I knew that's what you were going to say.
Yeah.
I was just about to say the same thing.
And you go down to the basement, and the whole point of this, and this is going to sound so strange to people nowadays, the whole point is you were going down the basement and you would do a drill, and this is no lie, in case we got nuked.
Yep.
And even as a kid, in elementary school, I'm like, well, if they nuke us, and like the whole school was down in the basement, and my school had K rations left over from World War II still in the basement. I remember as a kid going, this ain't gonna work. But it was a dream.
And you're sitting here going, what are these desks made of? You're showing us videos of entire buildings being flattened.
Yes.
This desk is going to save my life.
Yeah, we had to hunker down under our desks.
Yeah.
And that's just stupid because we didn't have a basement. But what's messed up, and I apologize I'm not going to get us off onto a tangent or on a different topic, but what's screwed up is that we're at a point now where they're doing drills in case someone comes in armed with a rifle and starts shooting people. I mean, no kid should ever have to have that taught to them as part of their school experience.
Talk about a way to lose innocence too.
Right.
Childhood should be an innocent time. And you really, because, I got to be naive about the world much longer than kids today,
Right. Bill Lamond, one of our buddies, has joined, and he says, "Get off my lawn, Alan. I was born in 1958."
Well, what led you to becoming a writer?
Well, I wasn't good at math and science,
as we've established.
And so when that dream died, I had I had discovered comic books, and I had this dream of I can draw comic books, and turns out not so good at drawing comic books. I can doodle, but my art never reached a professional level. But I started writing stories to have stuff to draw. And that in turn led to other artist friends asking me to start writing for them. And at that point I'm like, because I never really thought of myself as a writer. I just thought of myself as an artist who's coming up with a story. And it just kind of snowballed from there. And I give a buddy of mine grief about this. So I had a buddy of mine who set me down one day and he says, "It's tough love time." He goes, "You're never, ever going to be a professional comic book artist. I hate to break it to you. You're just not."
Wow.
He says, "However, you're not bad at this writing thing." and I think if you were to focus on one or the other, you'll get better at that one. Whereas right now, you're not at a level where you're going to sell anything to publishers. And this was in the pre-do-it-yourself days. There was no,
right.
So Marvel and DC or Archie were about your only options in those days. And I guess he hit me on the right day because it penetrated and set with me. And I started focusing on the writing. And he was right, because 2 years later, I sold my first comic script.
Wow.
So,
really?
Yeah.
How old were you at that time?
19, 20, 21.
Wow.
20.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Early 20s. I was out of high school.
Wow.
So, and so I did a little work, and then it dried up a little bit after that. And then in 2000, I got really busy. So, so there were some lean years in there. But then 2000, I sold a script to a larger publisher that turned into like a 4-year gig. And then while I was doing all that, I was writing a novel, trying to write a novel, which I sold in 2004. And so it came out in 2005, and I've been pretty steady busy since then.
What was that first novel?
It was called Evil Ways.
Okay.
Actually, so you can see the cover
Hey.
Right there.
There you go.
This is why the office, this corner of the office looks this way.
Right. Absolutely.
Because you'd be amazed how often that question comes up, and I can just go. But it was but yeah. So I've been writing steady since 2000-ish.
Okay.
So but steady working with books coming out since 2005.
Okay.
And our friend Bill tells us, and this is something I never knew about him, that he's won awards as a comic strip creator.
Oh, very nice.
I know that I'm probably never going to be a comic book level artist.
Right there with you, Bill. I still love to draw. No, sorry, I just saw his comment. Yeah, it's I still love to draw, and I still doodle. I do doodles for kids at conventions, and if people buy stuff from my store, I draw on their envelopes, and people enjoy
Your doodles
that.
are great, though, dude.
Yeah,
Right, but there's a lot of difference between doing that and doing somebody pulling a gun, chasing somebody down the street. Yeah, and so so I enjoy doing that. So I do that, and that keeps the drawing habit going.
So Bobby, I have a question. You mentioned that basically you wanted to be an artist first, and then writing came later. Are you familiar with that whole term they called the Marvel way back in the day?
The Marvel way,
right?
Yeah,
where they would literally just draw a picture and someone would write a script around it. When you first start writing, did you find yourself just creating pictures and then created a world around the picture, or did you always have a story in your mind?
I would have a loose idea, and I would. And when I started writing comic scripts, because I'm self-taught, I had no idea what I was doing. To learn how to, because you have to learn how to flow a page, even in the writing stage. The artist does the big bulk of that, but you have to know how to make the reader's eye follow down the page. So I would actually draw in very small, like thumbnails, very rough. I would draw out the page and write the script that way.
So you were storyboarding. You taught yourself to storyboard, and then you learned how to write script around that.
Yeah. So that because that helped me. That helped me in describing the panels for artists, because there are things you have to do, like if there's 3 characters in a panel and they're talking, whoever speaks first needs to be on the left side of the panel.
Yeah.
Whoever speaking second needs to be in the middle. Whoever speaking third needs to be, because you want the reader to read right, left, right. And so there's a lot of that. And so I was using the thumbnails and the storyboards to help me figure out how to write that. And eventually I stopped doing it. I don't do that anymore when I write. But it helps me to do that. It helps me to better describe what I'm seeing to the artist, because most of what I write in a comic script is instruction. The audience never sees it, but I also I can write enough to tell the artist what I'm thinking, but I can also draw just enough to where if I need to scribble it down for them, if they're like, I don't get what you're trying to say here, I can scribble it out. So that helps. But that was kind of how I taught myself doing all that.
That's
Okay.
awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm self-taught on all of it. I've taken a few classes here and there, but the bulk of it, I'm pretty self-taught. I learned a lot by screwing crap up.
Yeah, we know that. We know that. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Yes, all too well.
and sometimes just the best way to learn it is to do it.
Absolutely.
Yep.
And that's how when we're gonna talk about the fan films. That's why I did it. I wanted to write a script. I didn't know if I could. I needed a reason to do it. It gave me a reason to do it.
Yeah.
So
now, am I correct in thinking that the first live action script that you wrote that was produced was the Starship Farragut Conspiracy of Innocence?
Yes.
So how did that come about?
I met those guys. I was at Con Carolinas. I forget the year. And Con Carolinas is in Charlotte. And the way the convention is set up, they had just started adding comic guests. And so I was their first comic guest, which was pretty cool. But all the tables are in the hallway. And it's an L-shaped hallway.
Right.
And there's tables on each side, and there's dealer rooms and panels room, but all the guests are in the hallway. The Farragut guys were across the hall from me. Michael Day and John Brodner, who plays the captain, were there, and they were there. And throughout the weekend, the 3 days, I think at that point they had 2 live episodes and 2 animated episodes that played on a loop over and over.
Yeah.
And I would talk to them throughout the weekend as things were, during the slow periods. And I remember on the last day, sidling up to Michael Day and says, I think I have an idea for a story.
Nice.
Because just hearing them all weekend, I heard what they were doing. I already knew Star Trek, but I got to know because that's a new group of characters. Those are not pre-existing characters. And so I kind of got a feel for their characters. And so I was like, I kind of have an idea. And he says, pitch it. He says, write it up, send it to us. I can't guarantee we'll use it, but we'll look at it and let you know.
Yeah.
And so I did, and they liked it. We did some changes. Obviously, I mean, that's just the nature of writing anything.
Right.
And we wrote it. We made some changes. I updated the script. They wouldn't film it. I wasn't able to be there when they filmed it, which none of the I've not been there for any of the filming of any of the fan films I've written, which is kind of a bummer.
Yeah.
But I went down. I did get to go down and tour the sets. They were doing a little mini convention called Farragut Fest.
Right.
And they were doing tours
Awesome.
and all this. And so
Yes.
I went down, and they had invited me to come down as a guest. I threw some books out. We talked about writing it. I hadn't, at this point, it wasn't out yet. I actually saw the first rough cut of the episode there because it was me. It was me, and there were a couple of the kid actors. The kid actors were there, and none of us had seen it yet. And so John and Michael and Holly, they took the 3 of us into a closet.
Wow.
I mean, it was the size of a closet, and we sat there on wooden boxes with a laptop perched on a wooden box, and we watched it in this closet.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so it was really cool. So we were in a closet off the corridor of the starship. Watching the episode,
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, it was so surreal because I had never done it before. So
Yeah.
when the things that stuck out to me were delivery of lines. It'd be, ooh, that's a good line. And then it'd be like, oh wait, you wrote that. And it would just be like, ooh, So there was that kind of thing. And it was just seeing it come to life was really cool. But because you don't know what it's going to look like,
Sure.
And so I was just over the moon. And then seeing the people kind of speculate what it was going to be about beforehand, because we had done some stuff with Fan Factor and a couple of other places where they were interviewing us before it launched, and or when they put the trailer out, we would do things with it. And there's a line, because it deals with, I'm trying not to be too spoilery, but because it deals with kids, there's a character in there that goes, not fair, not fair. And that voiceover plays in the trailer. And I remember there were several people that were just convinced we were writing a Trelane episode. So I just had a ball watching everyone speculate.
Yeah.
Nice.
Either that or in the Children Shall Lead episode.
Yeah. And so it was great. It was fun. I got to see the rough cut. Then later, once the special effects and all were put in, I got to see little bits and pieces, because I did actually have input on what the planet looked like and all of that.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Like they were sending me sketches going, what do you think? And so that was great. I did not expect that. I just figured they would
Right.
handle that. But yeah, there was a lot of input from me that
good.
way. Yeah, and they were a joy to work with. I mean, all of the cast and crew, they were just a joy. And so they had the premiere at the studios because there was a big open area where they put it up on the wall.
Yeah.
I think maybe 200 people showed up for the premiere, which
Wow.
just
Awesome.
whoa. Yeah. So Mike Gordon rode down with me. The two of us drove down, and it's a hike from where I live to Savannah or to Kingsland.
Kingsland, yeah.
Yeah, it's like a 5-hour drive.
Yes, it is.
And we drove down, did the thing, and then drove back that night. It was a long day.
It's a long day.
But
No.
yeah, so we went down, got there early, got to tour the sets again. Mike had never seen the sets. We got to tour the sets, and we were there, and we were like, and we go, and the cast gets up and the director, and they talk a little bit about the episode. We're in the audience, and like I said, there's like 200 people, and they're like, okay, we're gonna show the episode. So the episode starts, and the teaser plays. Great. Then it goes into the opening credits. Great. It comes into the act 1 starts, and the ship is flying toward the screen, and there's the title. And as the ship passes, there's my name. And I remember leaning over to Mike and goes, you know what? I'm good. We can go right now.
That's all I needed.
That's really, that's my name in front of a ship that looks like the Enterprise. How cool is that?
Right.
So, but it was wonderful. We had a great time. The audience was happy. We got like a standing ovation. Oh, it's so wonderful.
That's great.
People were coming up and talking to us. They opened the sets up for tours after it was over. So it was a wonderful, wonderful moment. And and really that's what you get out of doing a fan. I mean, you guys have done because you're not making any money off this.
Right.
No.
This is purely a labor of love. So, and what I got out of that from those was totally worth all the hours that I put into, because it's a lot of work to make these things.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And all the hours you spent driving down there too.
Yeah. And I know, right? We should have been smart and at least just spent the night and drove back the next day. But no, but I was riding a high. I was just like,
I can imagine.
But yeah, so the two things I got out of it was that feeling. Well, actually, 3 things. I got to meet all the people, be in that world, tour all the sets, be around all that. That was cool. But it also told me that I could do it. And that was the thing. I didn't know if I could do it. And I can't just sit and write a script just for the heck of it. I can't do anything just for the heck of it. I have to have a reason. And so this gave me a reason to sit down, and write a script. And I was pretty happy with it. I think it comes out nice. Seeing it, once I saw it, like any other creative thing, I start going, I should have done that a little differently.
Right.
But that's everything, So so I got a lot out of it from that, and it just that feeling of seeing it up there with an audience, because watching it in that closet was cool and all, but watching it with 200 people.
It's a totally different experience.
Yeah, and they would never been able to fit all 200 other people into that closet.
No.
It's a lot of wooden boxes.
They barely put all of us in the closet. It was it was a tight squeeze, but it was so great. And the kid actors were fantastic. Both of them were there, and I got to meet them and their parents.
Cool.
And their parents had little cameos as just background officers, and it was great. They were awesome. They were so good, in fact, that while they were filming in my original script, they don't show up until later than they do in the film. That they were so good that they made a decision on set to show them earlier. Which kind of killed the surprise, but it worked. But it still worked. But they were so good that it worked.
Yeah. So. And if anyone's not seen Conspiracy of Innocence, I dropped the YouTube link in the comments. So feel free to check that on YouTube. I was actually there for that premiere. I think I met the ESO folks that weekend. I with my friend Kel Teskar, we wrote the Starship Farragut comic book, and so we were there with.
I remember seeing those. Yeah.
With that, and we had a little table there as well. And yeah, it's a fun weekend, and it's great. It's great as a longtime fan to get on that side of it, to have that experience of, like you say, watching it develop, watching the episode, watch people speculate about it, watch the reaction, good and bad. You know, to something that your contribution, like, and you're kind of your whole life, from the time you're a kid, you're pretending, making up those stories, and kind of thinking like, I would love to do that. And then you get the chance to do it in some capacity. I think fan films is a great gift because there's a finite number of people who can work on legitimate projects and legitimate Star Trek. Not everyone in the world can do it, but everyone in the world could do fan films if they want.
Oh my! And walking on those sets. Oh my God! I mean, they have done such a good job building those sets that you are totally immersed. I just stepped into this thing I watched on TV. It didn't feel like a set. I was, especially when the lights were on.
Yeah.
I am, oh my God, I am on a starship. Oh my God.
And with the curve of the corridor, you get that moment when you're walking down it where you can't see quite around. And it's you're as long as you don't look up, you're walking on the Enterprise.
Because with the red beams, you can't see out unless you look straight up. And I think probably we were at the second Farragut Fest. And I think the coolest thing was Mark Maddox had gone with us, and Mark was standing against the wall talking to some people. And I just happened to walk past, and he goes, I just had the strangest sensation. It's like, you don't belong on the Enterprise, but yet I just saw you walk. It's like, and suddenly the two things like clashed for me. But they're so beautiful, and I highly recommend, because they do set tours once a month still. It's changed names. It's Neutral Zone Studios, I think.
Right.
That's what they're called.
Yeah.
They still do tours. If you're a fan and you can get down to South Georgia, near the Georgia-Florida line, totally worth the going.
Do it.
I've never been, and I am dying to go.
Worth the trip.
I think that next time Chuck and Veronica go down, they're going to have to take me with them. I just want to
podcast trip.
Why? Yeah. We should actually do a live show from there. Okay.
Because they usually have guests that come in.
Yeah.
For their open house weekends. I think Robin Curtis was there last time, and
cool.
Some of the people that worked on the fan films are there.
Yeah.
I think it's this weekend or next weekend is the December one, and the two of the board kids from Voyager are there.
Oh, neat.
Cool.
Yeah, that's really cool. Okay, let me get some comments. Ryan says hi and says that Bobby Nash is the greatest writer happening right now. So that's
I got your $5, Ryan.
And he also has a question that's off the topic of Star Trek, and I think we might have to save this for toward the end of the show with a little bit of explanation. But he wants to know, who would you cast as Abraham Snow in animated or live action? And that's a character from probably the biggest series that you have going.
The guy there,
Yep.
Sorry, I keep starting to do this backwards. Snow is an action adventure series. I'm always leery of casting, because then I'm disappointed.
Yeah.
I will admit, when I was talking to Jeffrey Hayes, who did this poster, and he also did another one which I don't have hanging, and he asked me if I had an actor in particular, and I was mentioning a character trait about his hair not working right, and I think I said something like, "Oh, like that guy on Stargate." And so actually I found the poster where it's like, it can't look just like Joe Flanagan. So, I don't want to get sued.
Right.
Well, speaking of a segue, how did you get into that genre as opposed to, or in addition to, the science fiction and animation and comic book genre?
Oh, my love of, I love crime fiction, thrillers, mystery, action. I love that. That's, as much as I love sci-fi, I don't love writing sci-fi as much as I like reading and consuming sci-fi. I've written sci-fi, and I will probably will again. But my love is doing the crime stuff, and I grew up on Magnum and Rockford and Columbo, et cetera, et cetera. And those,
Right on.
that's kind of what Snow is. It's like kind of my love letter to those, where sometimes the crime is not as important as what the characters are doing.
Absolutely. Anybody who's ever seen the Maltese Falcon knows that.
Yeah, it's all about the characters, and then
yes.
okay, here's a crime they've got to deal with, and
right,
and how they deal with the crime.
Yeah,
is a lot of it. So, yeah, so that's my first love. Like Evil Ways, my first novel is a suspense thriller. I know with Evil Ways, a lot of people think it's like a horror thing, but and there's
Evil Dead.
There's a horror element to it, but it's not like supernatural or anything. It's you know, it's I always tell people that Evil Ways is kind of like if John McClane from Die Hard found himself in a 80s slasher movie.
Wow. Okay.
Okay.
So with that genre, what influenced you more? Are you more influenced by the ones you mentioned, the 70s stuff, the 60s stuff, the film noir, the 40s and 50s? Which is any of those that influenced you the most?
Probably the 70s and 80s, because on TV in the 70s and 80s, crime fighters were everywhere.
Yes.
You know. And most of the time they were normal people. Like you had your cops, you know.
Yeah.
You know, Chips and all those, you know, though you had your cops doing it, but Jim Rockford was a private investigator, Magnum Piano, you know. These were guys that it was their, you know, it wasn't like they weren't cops with the badges and stuff like that. It was so heart to heart, things like that. It was real people just solving crimes, which I thought was really cool. Yeah. And so I love the crime solving aspect. I grew up reading Encyclopedia Brown and
yes,
watching
me too.
The Hardy Boys and Nancy Drew, Scooby Doo. You know,
oh my gosh,
Scooby Doo was probably my first mystery show.
Definitely,
And so so there's something about that, and you know what? I never put it together till just now. But Evil Ways is very much like Scooby Doo. You think there's something supernatural going on, but there's not.
Nice.
You know?
Oh, I can see him now. I can see in your book, The Minor 49er.
Yeah. So it's like, and I never consciously put that together till just this moment. So
Bobby, you're telling us you have synthesized Star Trek, Spider-Man, and Scooby-Doo into a career.
Yes. You know?
Man.
And I'm still waiting to be able to write Spider-Man and Scooby-Doo.
There you go.
I write a lot of characters I grew up with, but those have eluded me so far.
Let me get a couple more comments in before we get too far afield. Bill would like to know who or what Trelane is. Who can?
Well,
go ahead.
There's an episode. I forget the title. Sorry.
Squire Gothos.
There you go, Squire Gothos.
Oh boy!
Trivia
contest time.
Ding ding.
Yes, they go to this planet, and there's this very playful, flamboyant character named Trelane who has magical powers. Think Q in the 60s.
Right.
And
Liberace in space.
Yeah, if Q was Liberace.
Yeah. And you know, and he's playing games with the Enterprise crew, and then we find out at the end of it that he's a kid. You know, Trelane's just a little kid.
Yeah.
And he just wants somebody to play with, and that's what Kirk, Spock, etc. are, is somebody to play with. So yeah, but yeah, very much a precursor to Q. There's a lot.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh yeah.
You know, actually, there's a great novel Peter David wrote,
Q Squared.
Q Squared, which is a great Trelane Q novel.
I remember that one.
So good.
Yeah. All right. Matt Sweatman says that they had a blast at Neutral Zone Studios a couple of months ago.
Nice.
Ryan says Maltese Falcon is one of the best films ever.
I love it.
It is. Agreed.
Bill says that he loved Encyclopedia Brown. Never figured out the whodunits before reading the solutions.
The one that always sticks out to me, and I remember it to this day, Encyclopedia Brown solved a mystery because lightning comes before thunder. Because the guy kept saying the thunder woke me up, and when I looked out the window, I saw the lightning, and it told me the guy was there. And because thunder follows lightning, not the opposite. He
Mm.
solved the mystery.
And as we all know,
Science.
thunder only happens when it's
Once.
raining.
Yes.
I can't believe there's other people who read Encyclopedia Brown.
Oh, everybody read those.
Yeah.
Yeah, so good.
That's good stuff.
So, Bobby,
I
speaking of, since you like that kind of stuff, did you ever hear or read something called Alfred Hitchcock and the Three Investigators?
I loved that series.
Really?
I had my uncle's collection of the ones from the 60s.
That is awesome.
Yeah.
I have a regular patron at the library where I work who has been checking out that entire series piece by piece because his kids are loving them, and he and his kids read them together. And there's 40 books in that series or something, and they're just going through the entire series. And he was in today, and I'm like, so your kids still enjoy these? He's like, yeah, they're still asking for more. So
they're great, and you would actually enjoy them even today, Bobby. They're about teenagers who solve crimes and through a whole bunch of weird things. They actually have the use of a chauffeur because they can't drive, but they have a chauffeur who drives them around, and they do. And it's just really good stuff.
Yeah. I've toyed with the idea, and it just never happens because again, I have to have a reason to do stuff. But I've wanted to do something with like a teenage investigator, or high school or college investigator, and I'm sure I'll get around to it one of these days. But my love of those things, because it's so different to how kids solve mysteries as opposed to adults solve mysteries. Because also when you look at Scooby-Doo, because they're kids, they're often ignored.
Right.
Go away, kids, you bug me. And so the kids have to be more creative in solving the mysteries. And I always appreciate something a lot more straightforward than just, hi, I'm a cop. Did you do it?
Yeah. Something I thought about, Bobby, you mentioned earlier all this, basically you did this yourself, you taught yourself, you basically didn't know enough to know that you probably shouldn't try to do it. And you hear so many creative people say that they literally pour themselves into what they do. So when you got any kind of first rejection, how did you handle that? Was that one of those things where it crushed you as a person?
Oh, it hurts.
Yeah.
Oh, it hurts. It hurts bad.
Yeah.
It still stings. I mean, I've been doing this a while, so I kind of go, I'll cry, let the one tear fall, and I go, okay, back to work. But no, I shopped Evil Ways around for 6 years before I found someone willing to go. Yeah.
Wow.
And then it turned out to be a crappy publisher, so it wasn't the greatest experiences at that point. And but I had a book,
Yeah.
and I used that book to get more work. So
Right.
But you talk about pouring yourself into it. I always tell people, I always get the question, what's your favorite?
Yeah.
And which is hard to do. But I always tell people, Evil Ways is the most me of anything I've written.
Okay.
Because I had no clue what I was doing. And there were things I would not do that way now.
Yeah.
But it's me. I mean, it's just pouring out of me. So especially if you know me, I've had people who know me who've read it and go, I can hear you reading it to me.
Right.
Yeah, because it's the way I like, even the narration, which should be this omniscient narrator, sounds like me. But you know what? You don't learn that unless you do it,
Yeah. True.
And so as the book came out, once the book was out, there's a lot to be said about finishing something to really motivate you to do it again.
Right.
Because I had started and stopped numerous attempts at writing a novel. I actually wrote one before Evil Ways that was awful. It was horrible. I eventually rewrote it. It was my science fiction novel, Earthstrike Agenda. When I first wrote it, it was about half the size it ended up being, and it was cliche ridden, very, just poorly written. But I liked the story, and I liked the idea that was there. And then after I had 2 or 3 novels under my belt, I went back and basically started from scratch and rewrote the novel. And it turned out to be much better the second time around. So
Now,
yeah.
before we run out of time, there's at least one more fan film that I wanted to mention.
Yes.
Because Veronica once starred in a script that you wrote,
yes.
which was Marie Curie,
Yep.
in the Project Potemkin line of films. And we talked to Randy Landers, who runs Project Potemkin, just a few episodes ago. But I was serving as a script editor at the time when your script came in, and it happened to be for the show. We ended up putting it to the show that Veronica was playing the first officer character on. And it worked out beautifully. And I wanted to get your opinion on how that script came out in the live action. And
Oh, sure. I loved it. I thought it came out great.
Basically,
And
he's asking you to critique his
Yeah,
role
right.
as script editor.
I know what he's getting at. He's like, you wrote a script where my wife was running around in a towel.
to be fair, I made sure she was the character in the towel.
Yeah. And I
It
remember
was a
when
space robe.
It was a
yeah,
space
when
robe.
I remember when I put that in the script, I remember telling Randy, I said it just makes more sense because she's trying to get this, she's like talking about I've taken like 12 showers to get this gunk off me. And it just made sense for her to be, not in a uniform. And I said, but if the actor doesn't want to do it, put him in a uniform.
Yeah.
And he's like, oh,
I
no,
read it and I was like,
she's game.
I know someone who will do it.
Yeah,
Right.
she's game. She's got but I got the idea. I'll tell you the funny story about how I got the idea. I met Randy. I did a convention at a convention at the library in Hoover, and his sets were in Hoover. And Michael Day had said, you should meet Randy. Randy wants to take you over and give you a tour of the sets. And I'm like, okay, I'll meet Randy. I'll go to the sets. I'm not writing anything. I don't have time. I knew that was where it was going. I don't have time. And so I go tour the sets. Randy and I are talking. We're having a good time. I've already told Randy, I don't have time to write anything. It's not going to happen. And after we finished the tour, we were sitting on the bridge. I was sitting at the navigator station, and I was talking to Randy. He was back by one of the back stations, and we're talking. And I just went, son of a bitch, I've got an idea.
Yeah.
Now, it's not I don't know if you guys figured this out from the watching it, but basically I rewrote a MASH episode and set it in Star Trek. There's a MASH episode where Father Mulcahy and Radar have to go get a wounded man, and he starts choking, and they have to do emergency surgery on the side of the road while they're being taught to how to do it. That's the plot.
Yep.
Nice.
So congratulations, Veronica. You were Father Mulcahy.
That's right.
In a towel.
In a towel.
I wasn't in a towel when I was doing
Wasn't in a
surgery.
towel there, yeah. But it was like, and so you were talking about things flowing out of you. I wrote that in like a day and a half.
Wow.
I mean, I just was, pop.
Wow.
But it was weird. When I wrote it, I didn't have any idea who any of the characters were. I had no idea who was playing what. So it would literally said captain, lieutenant, security officer.
Yep, I remember that.
A lot of them were that way because there were several volunteer productions that were running out of Project Potemkin. You never really knew which show it was going to be or who was going to be the characters in it. And in fact, I wrote one once where the guys who came in and produced the script didn't change it, and they're all just called security and lieutenant the entire episode, which is kind of weird.
Yeah. Or sometimes you'll write one, like I wrote one for Starship Webster, and I knew the characters because I had done another one. I'd done another one for Hospital Ship Marie Curie that became a Webster.
Okay. Yeah.
And so I wrote another one for Webster, and so I used the characters that I had seen in the episode. And he goes, "We may have to make that another ship." I'm like, okay. So, plus, there's a lot of turnover. People are doing this for fun, and nobody's making money. It's fun. They're so there are some people have a finite window of when they work on them.
Yeah.
So, but it's fun. I have a ball doing it, and nowadays too, and it's a little easier now because they're more like 10-minute things as opposed to 45 minutes, like Farragut and Star Trek Continues. So, like the last two I did were just because I had an idea, and I called up Randy and I'm like, "Hey, I got an idea. You want it?" He goes, "Sure, write that up."
Randy will never say no to that.
Yeah.
It's like, yeah, script, great, send it over.
Yeah.
Terrible. Okay, that's fine.
We can fix it.
Right.
Yeah, we can workshop that sucker. So whenever an idea pops into my head, I'll just go, "You want this?" "Sure." "Do you have a ship in mind?" just captain, lieutenant. We're good.
We'll work that out later.
Yeah, we'll figure it out. And then
Yeah.
and then the actors can add their personality to how the characters talk. Because if I don't know who's right, who the character is going to be, it's just straightforward. You know, could be anybody. There's no personality ticks that way.
On that note, how do you feel when you see an actor and they take liberties with the dialogue that you've written? Are you I don't think that you're one of those people that is like, you have to say it to the letter.
Oh God, no.
Yeah, because there are writers like that and directors like that and showrunners like that. You know,
I'm not even that way with the comics. You know, I'm always telling the artist, look, I wrote it this way. If there's something artistically that'll make this better and keep the story the same, let's do it. You know, tell me. And so, yeah, it doesn't bother me when, you know, things get, like I said, the Farragut, the kids come in early. It still works, you know. The only fear is if they make a change and it's awful, they're not the ones the audience is going to blame.
That's right.
You know,
Bobby Nash, he doesn't know Star Trek.
You know, if you talk to anyone, and I mean anyone from the Star Trek, Rick Berman and Brendan Braga era, they will tell you, based on like the question that Alan posed, you couldn't change anything.
Oh, no.
In TNG, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, Enterprise, nothing. You couldn't change a syllable without it going upstairs. And it was like big.
You had to get approval to change a word in a sentence.
I remember
Voyager was particularly notorious for that.
Yeah. I remember there was an interview with Bill Mooney who did one episode of Deep Space Nine.
I remember this.
Yeah.
And the line had the words "do not." You will do, or whatever it was, and he said "don't."
Yeah.
And they came to him and said, "So are you changing it?" And they called it. And he's like, "It's a."
Right.
It was to the letter. I mean, you didn't change a thing.
Yeah.
And they loosened up on that, because I know there was Picard. They talk about there's a lot of ad-libbing happening.
Right.
Yeah,
that happens
but it's
now.
It's a different world now.
Yeah.
You know, run by different people who have different ideas about it and aren't
Well,
so controlly. You know?
Yeah. Well, I think too, you know, and this is not a knock, because I love the TNG DS9 era.
Absolutely.
But the people in charge were not as creative as much as they were business minded. Rick Berman was more of a businessman than he was a writer.
Yeah.
I know he wrote some, but I mean, he was more of a business focus.
And very successful.
Yes. And they turned out some amazing stuff.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Considering they were under a lot of constraints. You know, Gene had a lot of, you can't do this, you can't do that, and that came down from the top, and they had to work around. You know, certainly the no conflict thing.
Yeah.
You know, conflict is drama thrives on conflict.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, you know, so the creators had to be creative ways to get around those things.
Yeah.
Where today we don't have that problem. We can, it works better that way. Great, let's do it. You know. So,
But Bobby, you talked about writing for actors. What about acting yourself?
I've never acted anything I've written. I have done some acting. I enjoy it. It's fun. I'm like I am with an artist. I am never going to win an Academy Award. I'm never going to be top billing on anything. But I can go in and I can say my lines and I can do funny things, and you know, and there's things that you don't think you can do until you do them.
Yeah.
I did a horror movie once where we were like, it was a murders in like a Biggest Loser type competition.
Right.
And so there's a whole, we spent a day doing all of the event activities for the montage. And there's one where like I'm in shorts and a t-shirt. We're running down this gravel road, and I have to trip and fall. And I'm like, I'm gonna hurt myself bad. but I did it. It was so good. The first time we did it, because the drill instructor is at the far end yelling at us. And so the director's like, when he says this, take your dive. I'm like, okay. And so now I got to look into where there was soft dirt and less rocks. So I didn't always
Right.
I didn't always take the dive on the right word, but because at one point I'm like, this is where I'm falling. We can dub the other part later. This is where I'm. But the first time we're running, and there's a bunch of us. We're supposed to have been at it a while, so we're all running like, like we've been running for hours. We're covered in sweat, and I go and I take the tumble, and the guy running behind me comes up, and he's supposed to help me up and say, "Let's keep going." The drill sergeant's gonna blah 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 blah, and he helps me kind of drag me back onto the path. And so we get there. I take my tumble. Because I fall off the road into the ditch. And he stops and goes, "Oh my God, are you okay?" And they're like, "That's not the line." And he's like, "You fell." And they're like, "He's supposed to fall."
Okay, so apparently you're really good at falling.
Apparently, yeah. So
it's convincing.
I got to have a fight scene.
Wow.
Like a fight scene. I got to get murdered.
Ooh.
I got to be a dead body when they find me later. I'm all, it was awesome.
That's great.
I've done a lot of extra stuff for small roles. I played a tech guy in the same guy, the character in 2 different movies. So I got to remember. I was Tony the tech guy in a couple of movies. So I had it was like this 80s haircut, and I'm doing all that. And so, the main character kind of roughs me up a little. And so that was fun. So I get to do stuff like that or extra stuff. And there was a time there, if in Atlanta, if you needed an angry fat guy, I was your man. I played that role a lot.
Matt says he remembers seeing you in Doom Patrol and Ozark.
Yep. Doom Patrol. I did Doom Patrol twice. The first time you barely see me, but I was in a suit and a tie. We were outside at a bus station, and I'm the only person there in a suit and tie. And so I'm watching, like, they don't do anything with it, but they have me watching the main character like I'm a government agent. And that's what I wrote in my head. Oh, I'm a government agent. So, and then I did an episode where I played one of the Dannysons, which are the weirdos. And I had a full beard at the time. I had grown a beard for another role. And so they asked me to keep the beard to play this role. And so they dressed me up like George R.R. Martin.
Wow.
And so I played Disco George.
Oh, that's
awesome.
amazing.
And it was a party. We were having this party at the Doom Patrol mansion because Danny the Street is this supernatural being who is sick. And because Danny was a street, and then Danny turned into a brick, and then the brick got broken, and we have the party to build this positive energy that'll help Danny grow. And Danny becomes like a tire, and then we all have a special effect where we all lay hands on Danny, and we turn into stardust and go off into So it was awesome, but it was a party. And it was just
Doom Patrol is really weird.
Yeah, so we just threw a party. We just threw a party in the Doom. You just can't be loud because you don't want to pick up on. So and it was filled with the Dannysons, is what they call the weirdos, the freaks, the weirdos. And so we had people there. There's a lot of people in like painted outfits. There were people running around in nothing but Speedos and wings, which is and this was the 3 days before Christmas Eve. It was cold. Yeah, I felt really bad for them. And we had some drag performers there. There were people singing and dancing. It was just so much fun. We had a ball.
I bet.
And then awesome. I got to hang out with Robot Man and Negative Man because my scene was with them. So I spent half the time with them and half the time with this group of drag queens who were just awesome.
Nice.
Oh, I laughed a lot. We had so much fun.
That sounds great.
And then and I got to meet a James Bond. I got to meet Timothy Dalton. So
really?
You know what? It was a great experience.
Wow.
So and Ozark was awesome as well. I did a lot on Ozark. So
okay. Well, we're coming up on time, Bobby. Tell folks where they can find more of you and anything you've got coming out to promote. Promote it.
Okay. Well, BobbyNash.com is my website. There's links to everything
Wow.
there.
You got your name.
Yep. Had that for a while. Yep. All of the links to all of the fan films are under the film tab.
Okay.
They're all on YouTube. Go watch them, enjoy them. I'm all over social media, Facebook. There's links there to all that. You can find me. Upcoming, I do have on the 15th of this month. Excuse me. I wrote a 6-book comic book series, graphic novel series for an educational publisher called Abdo. Their primary audience are libraries, public libraries, as well as high school and middle school libraries. And it's called Crimes in Time, and it's 6 standalone books about crimes set during real historical events. And as today being Pearl Harbor Day, one of them is set during the attack on Pearl Harbor, but there's 6 different historical events, and so the crime has to interact, with, not just on that day. I mean, it has to be a tied in, and then research the real event. We talk about the real event, and because like I said, these are aimed more at 10, 12 and up, and so we're talking about the real events. And so they picked 6: the Great Chicago Fire of 1871, Pearl Harbor, sinking of the Titanic, the blackout in New York of 1977 with the Son of Sam, which that one was the one that made me raise my eyes. Oh, wait, this is for kids?
Right.
Because Sam is in the book. Hurricane Katrina and the eruption of Mount St. Helens.
Okay.
So those were really cool. Those will be out this month. There's a bunch of stuff coming. I have a Lone Ranger that's due out any day now that I did for Moonstone. I wrote a story. I don't know where this one anybody will be able to find it, but some point next year, I did a comic book for the United States Embassy in Peru. One of their giveaways. Yeah, they created 5 superheroes, Peruvian superheroes, and this will be the 3rd book. I didn't write the first 2, but it's just a standalone. Put it inside the comic are information on the programs that they offer. One when they're in high school, one when they're in college. And so I wrote a story using one of the characters that hadn't been focused on yet, and told a story that starts with her in high school and ends with her working toward her master's. And so she's taking advantage of the programs, but she's also a superhero. And so there's a nice little superhero story. But I believe they're giveaways that they'll do, in Peru.
Okay.
So I'm hoping I'll at least see one.
Yeah.
But that was a fun gig. And I had read the first 2 that they had, and it's not deep storytelling, because you can't, like, one of the rules was, don't show us in a bad light. Like, we don't want to hand this book to kids and their parents and go, send your kids to the U.S. on this program. By the way, they might get kidnapped like they do in this book. So you don't want to do that.
Right.
But I had a blast with it. It was so much fun. And
awesome.
So those are all coming. Plus there's more stuff. There's always Snow and other novels and whatnot. So
Okay. For Alan, where can people find more of you?
Well, on this very network, ESO network, you could find Modern Musicology. We are coming up on our last 2 episodes of the year. We just recorded number 98, and that is an interview with Gina Schock of the Go-Go's. And our final episode of the year is that is number 99, and that is going to be our sort of like favorite holiday music. It's just a general topic about holiday music. And then we're going to take a little break, and then we're going to come back and start year 3 with episode number 100. And we have something special planned for that.
Congratulations.
Also, thank you very much. And also you could check out Doctor Who A to Z, where we are currently reviewing the new 60th anniversary specials that are happening right now on Disney Plus, starring David Tennant and Catherine Tate. So go check that out.
And how about you, Keith?
You can find me on X and on Facebook, primarily the ESO Network Facebook groups. And I may need to start listing every group individually, so I sound like I'm doing something after this group.
That's why I have the website. It's all. I only have to remember one. It's all there.
Well, how about us, Veronica?
Feltnerdy.com.
Yep. And if you're in the Atlanta area, this Saturday, December the 9th, we're going to be appearing at both the Sinful Variety Show and the Puck and Puppet Show here in Atlanta. So check out Felt Nerdy on Facebook, and those links will be there, or just Google them. We're going to be all over the place. Where else can people find us?
Monkeying Around, a podcast about the monkeys.
And do you have a closing for us this week?
I'm always surprised because I always forget.
Anything Star Trek-y?
Or Nashy.
Boldly go.
There we go.
All right, that'll work. That'll work. And so people should join us again next week at Thursday evening at 8 p.m. Eastern, because that's your cue.
Oh, yes.
Or
Because
Veronica.
we're doing a quiz, and I'm going to be the quiz host, and I'm going to be asking them the questions because I would never be able to answer any of the questions that they would, or if I could, they would be faster than me.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to be asking the questions, and we're going to have a special guest with us joining us on the quiz, and you guys will see who that is next week.
It's Joe Campbell.
Oh, I'm going to be surprised.
No, we want people to anticipate it. It's
Right.
Joe Campbell.
Joe
Yeah.
Campbell from Dragon Con.
That's
Yes.
right. He'll
And
be
lots
joining
of
us.
That'll be
And
interesting.
Yeah, we're gonna have a quiz, a trivia face-off with Veronica picking the questions, which is gonna be a whirlwind.
Oh,
Yes,
Lord.
I
I'm going to
already
read
have
about Ferengi. I'm going to read about Ferengi all week.
All right, so everybody, make sure you're here next Thursday, 8 p.m. Eastern. Everybody,
Be
take
fine.
care. Have a good night.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.